Good morning. We are live on YouTube, but we're going to bring on our Facebook communities, Atlanta Falcons fans on All Falcons on Facebook and Scott Kennedy Sports on Facebook. So we'll bring those in, make sure everybody's here, and then we'll get started. And welcome in, everybody. This is Forging the Falcons on your regularly scheduled 9 a.m. Eastern Wednesday time. I am Scott Kennedy. I am in Atlanta, Atlanta native, been here 40-something years. This on this side over here is Nick Kendall. He is in Seattle. So we are coast to coast with your coverage for NFL football and the Atlanta Falcons. So welcome in, everyone. We got a good show for you today, I hope. And your participation in the chat will make it even better. So come on in, have something to say. Leave a like, a subscribe, a share, bring in more Falcons, more NFL fans, because Nick and I enjoy the process as much as anything and talk a lot of football, fantasy football, draft, you name it. So, Nick, how are you doing this morning?
I am doing pretty well. A little tired, but overall can't complain. Might have to pivot some of my plans for this week with the whole wildfire smoke, trying to figure some stuff out there. Not because we'd be in danger of being burnt, but carrying 50 pounds over 10 miles a day and 3,000 plus elevation gain, not great when the air quality is above 100. So we'll figure something out. But it's all good over here.
Yeah, well, hell, if it all gets canceled, come on down and see us in Denver. This is the meet and greet weekend for Mile High Huddle. And being that we both do some work with the Denver Broncos as well, we've got a pretty good idea of the Seattle Seahawks. So it should be a fairly well informed preview. But again, you never know. Who'd have thought the Falcons would have come back and made it put a scare into the defending Super Bowl champions after being down 28-3. So as they say, that's why they play the games for sure. Want to talk a little bit of power rankings as well. I felt like there's a little bit of double standard going on in the ESPN power rankings. We'll talk a little bit of Desmond Ridder. When is it time to start seeing Mr. Ridder at quarterback? Could it be this week? Probably not. Could it be as soon as next week, depending on how the game goes this week? We'll see. We'll get into that. We'll talk Drake London. Drake London is in some elite company after just 2 games. A pretty interesting stat there. And then where is Kyle Pitts? Where is Kyle Pitts? So, Nick, just getting started real quick. I titled something that one of our contributors on All Falcons wrote. Aiden wrote, he says, "Good morning, everyone." And Joe Cannon's in here also saying, "Good morning, fellas." Well, good morning, Joe. Appreciate you being here. Aiden wrote up the ESPN Power Rankings article, and I noticed a bit of a double standard in there. Not with where the Falcons were ranked. If you think the Falcons are 32 in the NFL, so be it. I'm not gonna. But as someone said, "Hey, what do you mean double standard?" They finally got it right. I'm like, well, it takes 2 for there to be a double. And for me on there, and not to sound like a bitter Atlanta sports fan, but I think that the Saints are getting a little bit of a double standard in this one, Nick. The Falcons, and this, let me drop this in the chat here real quick. For ESPN's power rankings, I like to share the links when I'm talking about them. The Falcons were 32, so be it. I think they're playing better than that, but whatever. Not a whole lot better. They're still 0-2. But the Saints went up 7 spots after beating the 32 Falcons last year. Okay. You beat the team that's 32 and you went up last week. I'm sorry. And you jump up 7 spots. Wow. That's pretty impressive, especially since you got your butts kicked for 3.5 quarters. And to be fair, they did move the Falcons up a spot. It's like, okay, the Falcons seems better than we thought. So the Falcons go on the road to the Rams and make a miraculous comeback that falls short against defending Super Bowl champs and your top 5 team in your power rankings, and you drop them 3 spots back down to 32. Meanwhile, the Saints go on the road and lose by double digits to the Buccaneers and look pretty bad doing it, and they actually went up in the power rankings. I'm like, I don't particularly like that one, Nick. I don't like that one.
Yeah, I guess let me just stand on the other side here, be a Skip Bayless to your Shannon Sharp. But I thought that the Saints played the Buccaneers pretty close for most of the game. They had Tom Brady stymied until the very end. So you're kind of talking about 3.5 quarters. The same thing similar with that Saints and Buccaneers game. But again, it's the power rankings, and we're
I
2
know.
games in, and who you've played makes as much difference as who your team is so far. So we'll see how it plays out. But the Falcons team, I think this is a more scrappy bunch than I thought overall heading into the season. For them to fight back against the Rams like they did, hats off to them, because that had been an easy lay down and die kind of game.
So Dan Hansis of NFL.com comes out with his power rankings, and he actually moved and again, I don't have any problem. You say, listen, the 12th team played really well on the road against the number 3 team. I think they're better than 12. Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
But to me, it's always kind of a hybridization of the college football polls. Were always trying to make a hybrid model of standings and power rankings, when really, when it's rankings, they are power rankings. When obviously it's like, okay, the 25 team goes on the road as a 17-point underdog to play the number 1 team, and they lose by 10, and then they drop out of the rankings. I'm like, why are you dropping them? They were supposed to lose.
Yeah.
But these are how they're ranked. So again, the Saints played well. They played well against a top 5 team on the road, lose by 10, you move them up. That's fine. You take the 29 team against a 5 team and they come within a possession of winning and you drop them. Okay, that's illogical. Those don't mesh with me. That's a double standard. And I think I edited into one of the editor's comments in there is like, it's almost as if he's trying to force feed a pre-existing narrative. This is where I think they should be. This is where I'm going to have them, and I will do things. Anyway, Dan Hansis for NFL.com, he says exactly what we have been saying all summer, Nick, talking about, the Falcons nearly exercised some demons and stuff, but his final comment was, this is a better Atlanta team than we saw a year ago. Now the Falcons just need to find a path to victory. I'll put that one in the chat too. That one's from NFL.com. That sounds pretty familiar, Nick.
Yeah, it is definitely a more talented team. Got to figure out how to come out a little faster, and hold on to the games. You have a little bit of both. If you combine those, you either get an amazing game or one of the worst games of the season from the Falcons. But talented team, still some questions there. I thought that, and talking about, not to pivot too much, but I wouldn't put last week's game on Mariota more so than the defense coming out and still showing a little bit of weakness in the run defense area. What's Mariota supposed to do when you're down 28-3? Could he be better? Yes, but you're not paying him to be Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady. So defense still has some work. I think that's my biggest takeaway watching this game and seeing this team. Young, up and coming, but a few pieces and growth of your own guys away.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, I don't say it's an uber talented team. Again, I've been harping on the fact that there's $111 million of 210 available on the field, which puts them by far dead last. It'd be nice to have that other $100 million on the field. Speaking of $100 million, folks coming in the chat want to say hello to him. Dominic coming in says, good morning, Scott and Nick and Dog Nation. He says, go Dogs.
Wow.
Michael Ranquillo joining us from Arizona says, good morning, Scott and Nick on Forging the Falcons. Go Hawks? Which Hawks? I don't think you're a big Seattle Seahawks fan.
I think he's doing it for me. I think that's just Michael being super
I think
nice.
That's a hawk eye. You got to be careful when we're talking Seattle Seahawks here, Michael. I know you're not the confrontational type. I think you're looking at a different bird of prey in this area right here. And the thing is they do call them the Hawks up there. That's something you never hear down here because we have the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks around here are the Atlanta Hawks. So you never hear the Seahawks referred to as the Hawks except by Seahawks fans. Kind of like the only people that calls the South Carolina Gamecocks USC are South Carolina Gamecocks fan. Everybody else on God's green earth knows who USC actually is. And I'm a SEC guy. I get it.
Yeah.
So again, there were, and some of those holes that we talked about, Nick, I'm seeing Eric Harris in the flats, 30-plus-year-old safety out there covering where I should have a healthy Isaiah Oliver, but Isaiah Oliver is still not 100% back from his injury. Eric Harris covering the flats is a recipe for disaster. No offense to him, but he is a strong safety-ish type on the backside of his career, and he was a journeyman to begin with. That's a hole. That's one of those where you say, okay, there's a problem. Um, I also still think there's a little bit of a problem on the left side of the defensive line.
Yeah. Your defensive line still has some issues. I mean, you're looking at some of these young guys, but I thought that the likes of Ogundeji, he's really not a starting quality player out
Right.
there. I mean, rotational, that's fine, but right now it
Mhm.
looks like he's what was he, a 5th round pick 2 years ago?
Yep.
He looks like a 5th round pick 2 years ago.
Right.
It's not his fault that he's out there. It's the issue that the roster's lacking that talent. So I'm not going to bury him. He'd be a fine rotational player. Also thought Lorenzo Carter didn't have the best game out there. Jalen Hawkins. I mean, just overall, this Falcons team needs some of these young guys to step up and get better. Not the best game also from our guy Grady Jarrett. So this the defensive front. It kind of looked a little bit more like last year, a little more scrappy than last year,
Mhm.
which is good because that's improvement. That's what you're looking for this year. And I don't want to be the moral victory guy, but with how this roster is stacked up right now, if you want to have some enjoy this team, you have to look for a little bit of moral victory sometimes. And unfortunately, a step back on the offensive line in this week as well, which was not to be, I guess, maybe a little bit unexpected considering how salty the Saints defensive front is to have them step back. But, what did the Rams had an extra 3 days to prepare, licking their wounds after that Buffalo game. I mean, they were going to come in ticked off, and they looked
Yeah.
like it, especially on that defensive front.
Yeah, that's not the time you wanted to play the Rams.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and they came back and made a game of it. I'm not looking. Part of this is expectations. Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons joined us on Monday, and welcome back, Nick. You missed Monday, and we talked about, as you're taking away positives from this game, it's like, well, I don't hear moral victories. Well, part of it is where are your expectations to begin with? I think my expectations going into the season was 2-15. I'm not going in expecting to beat the Rams on the road.
Yeah.
And I thought that you had a better chance to beat the Saints at home, but I picked the Saints. They're up and down a better team, which is going to be the case when you've only got 50% of your salary on the field. I'll say it again.
Yeah.
You're going to be out talented. You're going to be out depthed by almost every single team you play. That tells over the course of 60 minutes. But so what are you looking for? I'm looking for the growth of the younger players. I'm looking for Taquan Graham at that left defensive end spot in that 3-4, who's playing really well. You mentioned Ogundeji at the end. In the first game, Nick, it was almost a 2-1 in favor of Ogundeji snap count with Ebiketie. And for me, Ogundeji wasn't playing the run very well. Okay, so why do I want him in there then?
Yeah.
If he's a liability in the run, he's a liability. The snap count went to about just above over 50% in favor of Ebiketie in game 2. So they're adjusting. And it doesn't have to be a knee jerk, okay, we got to go 75-25 with our rookie. But I do see the adjustments being made and the players coming in. But you mentioned Ogundeji, being a 5th rounder. Taquan Graham, I think, was in the 4th.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way he's playing. I mean,
Yeah,
I
he looks like a
really
starter.
do. So you start looking for growth. Richie Grant, 2nd-year safety. I think he has taken a step up and he's playing pretty well too. So those are the kind of things I'm looking for, Nick, along with the young players. So there's plenty of young players to talk about on this team right now.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of young talent. Again, not to harken back on this one, but I was pretty disappointed in the offensive line in this one. Now you're going against maybe some of the old heads in here will get irritated at me for saying this, but arguably the greatest defensive player of all time, Aaron Donald, given what he's doing at his position, as dominant as he is. I mean, he's so far away from anybody else at his spot at a impactful position as well. We can get after the passer, and it makes it pretty hard there. And I feel bad for Dahlman coming out there at the center spot, but I thought Dahlman was getting his lunch taken away in this game pretty consistently. Now, that doesn't mean that Hennessy would have been any better, but I got it right that time. Not Hennessy, but Hennessy, but the drink. But overall, the Elijah Wilkinson, the center spot, and the right tackle, the usual suspects, unfortunately, really, in my opinion, took a step back when I watched this game on the first one, especially in that first half.
Yeah, and all things considered, though, I thought, I don't know. Again, it's a little bit about expectations.
Yeah.
PFF says the 3 worst players on offense were Caleb McGarry, Elijah Wilkinson, and Drew Dahlman. I didn't feel
Well,
that way.
no,
I really didn't. Now, did they have trouble moving? Well, yeah, they at
yeah.
times they did, but again, I think Caleb McGarry is playing at a average to above average level. I think he looks very good. And they had their hands full, and they were moving Aaron
Yeah.
Donald around a little bit. And
Yeah.
again, one of the old heads. I'm one of those guys. So I'm an '80s kid. You go into the '70s, you might come up with someone else, but an '80s kid's always going to say LT.
Yeah.
LT is the greatest defensive player of all time.
Yeah.
You're not going to find a Gen Xer that's going to say really anybody but LT.
Yeah.
He was different. He was different. Chris Walker coming in on Facebook. Appreciate you coming in, Chris. He says, good morning, everyone. Happy hump day. People elsewhere love Atlanta, but hate Atlanta sports teams and do their best to diss and dismiss them. I think a lot of it's because it's not the biggest media market. It's top 10 media market, Chris. We're up to like 8 in the country. This is a big media market. One of the problems is it's a transition. What's the word? Migrant.
Transient.
People move here all the time.
Yeah.
It's a huge, and people bring their previous teams. It was one of the things that made Atlanta United so popular. Nobody was a fan of the Chicago Fire. Nobody's a fan of the New York Red Bulls that come here, but everybody could be a fan of Atlanta United. So it was one of the reasons they're so popular. But we are a top 8 media market in Atlanta right now. The problem is the sports franchises have been so bad. Who has been the best franchise in Atlanta sports since its inception? That's easy. The Atlanta Braves.
Yeah.
The Atlanta Braves were trash in the 70s and 80s also. Horrible. 90s, that turned around. And you look, the Superstation helped with that on a national level, Channel 17. You might not remember the Superstation, Nick, but the Cubs and the Braves were on every cable station across the United States. So lots of Cubs and Braves fans national across the nation.
Oh, man, I hate them.
But the Falcons haven't sustained that success in order to get the bandwagoners and hold them. And people come to this town, fans of the Giants, fans of the Jets, fans of the Steelers. My parents moved me from Ohio when I was 5. Our rivalries when I was in elementary school wasn't Georgia Tech or any like that. It was frickin' Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio State, because of everybody that had fled. And right now it's going on again. And I'll get off this in a second. Right now it's going on again with the folks fleeing their lockdown states. I've seen more New York and California tags down here in the last year, 18 months, than I have since I left New York and California. So there's another influx coming right now. So it is a big media market, and it's getting bigger. It is. It's getting bigger. Now, win the bandwagon, and it'll be just fine. But, who's going to respect the Atlanta Falcons right now?
Yeah, and Dave got the right word here. Transient. Not to show off my Seattle Pacific Northwest vibes here, but the reason I know this word is because the orcapods up here in the San Juan Islands, you have the residents, the ones that live there all year, and the transient population.
Very cool. The drifters.
Yeah, if you ever get a chance to come up to Seattle land for a summer weekend, head up to the San Juan Islands and do a orca cruise, because it is pretty incredible to see a couple pods there.
You've heard me. I will. We'll do that. I love the nature stuff, and the killer whales. They're not called nice guy whales.
No.
They're cruel. I think they're the baddest things on the planet. As far as they're amazing animals.
No registered attack on humans, which is wild because they could absolutely rip somebody apart.
They're super smart, and I mean, anyway.
Yeah, really cool.
Where was I going with this? And then I'll get done. Going back to. You've heard me say before, I don't trash talk because I don't take it very well. Man, if you're in Atlanta and I'm wearing a Falcons shirt or something or anything like that, and someone says something to me about it, the Falcons, I'm wearing my New England Patriots shirt. It's like, that's when I start getting a little nasty, because I grew up with that crap in the 80s with the bad teams. You'd go to the Braves games and there was 15,000 people of them and 10,000 were Mets fans. Let's go Mets. And that's when the Mets were good. I hated the Mets.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, if you got a problem with a local guy supporting his local team, you can take your happy ass back to wherever you came from. That's when I start getting a little nasty.
Yankee Doodle Dandy, right? No. Back to the game, though, and the Falcons in general. This team, and we got a bunch of people coming in. AE, what's up? Good to see FC Donley. Dave's in the house. Smart Ride. You guys need a morning show name. We do have a morning show name. It's Forging the Falcons. But
I think he means something maybe a little more specific.
Okay.
Broncos for Breakfast is a morning show name.
I got you.
Falafels with the Falcons.
Frappuccino Falcons. That's more of a Seattle kind of thing.
So, and that's where he comes in here and says that
Yeah.
we're up for, we can change these around. I've got one for, behind enemy lines when I interview players from the other side of things. AE coming in, he says, "What's up?" FC Donnelly coming in. So it looks like the algos are starting to reach some folks out there as people are starting to flood in. So hit that like, subscribe, and share button. Make sure you get those alerts when you come in, and help us find some more folks. Dirty South, the Dirty South talk. Yeah, that one might get flagged, but I know the Dirty South Soccer is Atlanta United on SB Nation, so I know they've got the Dirty South in there too. So, who let the birds out morning show?
I was like Flapjack
Hey,
Falcons.
when you listen to this after the fact, throw them in the comments. Come in, throw them in the comments. It could be basically Forging the Falcons is the overview, kind of like Mile High Huddle is the overview, but we're Broncos for breakfast on Mile High Huddle. So Forging the Falcons could be the big one, and then we name the different shows. So I'm all about it. I'm all about it. Getting back on topic here a little bit with young players, and Paul Jones comes in and says, "How do you think the Falcons will try to involve Kyle Pitts more?"
Man, this is Paul. I'm in your boat because I drafted Kyle Pitts in the 5th round, and he's given me like 2 points a game so far. I'm not trading him. I had like 4 trade requests come in for him this week. I'm not stupid. I'm going to hold on to him. But how do the Falcons get Kyle Pitts more involved? I think you need to get some shot plays out there for him. You need to have written in the game script, this is a play action drop back. And if you have this coverage, you are taking a shot. You have a guy with an alien wingspan out there that could honestly be the single best X receiver in football coming up here. You need to get him some targets down the field, and especially in the NFL where you have spot fouls for pass interference. I mean, the Broncos the last couple weeks, Cortland Sutton's drawn like 4 pass interferences that has accumulated like 80 yards. And some of these aren't even, the best decisions or throws, but you're giving your big receiver out there who has that inherent advantage down the field. More good is going to happen than not when you isolate that against single high coverage. So how do you get Kyle Pitts more involved? I think you just need to have some drawn up plays. Like this is a Kyle, unless you're going up against a cover 4 look here or a cover 2 look, or he's doubled, which means then you go to the check down or this other read, toss it up to number 8 out there because he's going to come down with it 75% of the time. Or it's either going to be a catch or a pass interference 75% of the time.
Yeah, he's 6'6", has almost like a 7.5 foot wingspan. I mean,
he's a basketball player. I mean,
yeah, it's the longest wingspan recorded in 30 years for a tight end or wide receiver. Throw him open. One of the first things I thought of, Nick, was put him in motion a little bit. Motion him some. You already talk about dropping him in the slot. If you have trouble getting a guy open, you put him in the slot. There's more things to do. Let's see. Joe comes in. He had the comment right here. He says, Mariota doesn't look his way when he's open. There have been some breakdowns on some things like this where, Kyle Pitts is open and he's not getting the ball right away for a reason. But Nick, you've heard me say that an NFL quarterback, hell, even a good college quarterback, if you watch them, 5-step drop, set foot, throw, it is a completion on the first read. It's a completion 95% of the time. It's just, it's an easy rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 5 steps, set foot, throw, first read, all in rhythm. 95% of the time it's completion. Why is that? Well, because that's your first read. So Kyle Pitts needs to be the first read on a lot more things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Kyle Pitts, no or yes. If it's a yes, turn it loose. If it's not, then we'll start, checking down just a little bit. But yeah, he definitely needs to get more involved. That said, we're talking about some young players, and Jeremy Sean comes in real quick on YouTube. Says, "Good morning, fellas. Stopping by and hit a like and push that Google love. Oh, appreciate it, Jeremy. Good to see you. Good to see you." Drake London. So Brad, and I forget his last name. I'll share the screen. Give Brad a little love from PFF, from Pro Football Focus. Let me share this screen here real quick. Share screen. He came up with an interesting stat here that was kind of cool. I mean, it's one of those. It's like, okay, that's really stretching it here, But of wide receivers that are 21 years old and had 150 yards or more in their first two professional games, he joins this list: Stephon Diggs, Deshaun Jackson, Randy Moss, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Jamar Chase, and DK Metcalf. There's two others there that kind of flamed out that I wrote up about. But other
DeAndre
than that,
Hopkins did
that's
not.
about an 8 out of 10 hit rate on
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, no, that's a good company to have. He's been great so far. I know that you were pretty skeptical of a top 8 pick at the wide receiver
Still am.
position.
Yeah,
Yeah,
still am.
but so far, I mean, 2 games sample size. Also, I mean, you've probably seen what's going on in Denver right now with just Sutton and the weapons kind of falling apart and across the league. I mean, if you don't have, it takes a team no matter what, but wide receiver is emerging as one of those positions that needs to be in the same light as offensive tackle, cornerback, edge rusher. So, especially with how they're getting paid. I mean, unbelievable. I guess the Jags look pretty good actually with Christian Kirk out there, but I digress. Yeah, he's been incredible so far. I like that they're getting him involved. I do think, and I haven't gone back and broken down the Falcons all 22, but my gut would be on this: the Falcons are probably seeing a lot more attention towards Kyle Pitts, given what he
Mhm.
did last season. And then Drake London has been the big beneficiary. If he keeps carving him up, you're going to see a little bit of more ebb and flow on that
Right.
right now. Or if the Falcons even had one more weapon there, then you couldn't be so stuck on stopping Kyle Pitts. But it seems like Kyle Pitts is being what's the word I'm looking for right now? A distraction, a little bit.
Decoy.
Decoy. That's the word.
Yeah,
Yep.
he's a decoy, and that will get old for him. That's when guys start saying he's in his second year already.
Yeah.
This year's a bit of a throwaway year. This is one of the reasons why I didn't want to take a pass catcher last season. This year's his first year was a throwaway year. His second year is a throwaway year. His third year, now you're into year 3 and you're building up in earnest where the check mark should be going in the right direction. Now you're in year 3. Is he going to want? The good thing is Arthur Blank hasn't lost many players that he's wanted to keep. Unfortunately, they've overpaid guys that they probably should have let go. But if this was 1980s, early 1990s, Deion Sanders era, those and before, any good player like a Kyle Pitts was gone as soon as his rookie contract was up. And that's what worried me is like by the time you can take advantage of Kyle Pitts and Drake London, this team, they're going to be 3-4 years into their contracts. Are you going to be able to keep them around? But yes, I was not a fan of the Drake London pick for those reasons that I was just saying. You've got big problems in other places where what difference does it make if I put a supercharger on my engine if I don't have any tires? My tires are flat. But the other scoutism I've used a zillion times is it's not the players you miss that you don't take that hurt you. It's the players that you take and can't play that hurt you. And right now, Kyle Pitts can play. Drake London the early returns are really good. Looks like he can play. You keep stacking up good players, you'll be just fine. So that's the more important thing instead of the position is keep stacking good players. And the first round picks so far from Terry Fontenot have been solid, been very solid. But yes, I think the whole world thinks Kyle Pitts should be getting the ball more.
Yeah, I got lucky this week because I had Jalen Waddle and Lamar Jackson go off, so I was doing okay. But Kyle Pitts, step on up, buddy, and I think it's coming. It's a matter of time here. You're coming up against a Seahawks team this week that is wanting to play more cover 2 match quarters with 2 high safety shell, whatever you want to call it, whatever the actual coverage is. And that should lend itself to less deep targets, but more middle of the field work. And crossing routes specifically. And you got Kyle Pitts there, who is 6'6", 250. Get that guy some crossing routes or some drags or something.
Quick slant, anything. A little button hook, 7 yards, and let a linebacker try and tackle him.
Yep.
You're dragging him for 7 more yards minimum.
Yep, 100%. And the Seahawks also are playing 2 rookie cornerbacks now. Tariq Woolen, 5th-round pick, who we both liked coming out of UTSA, has been really good so far this season. But Kobe Bryant, last year's Jim Thorpe Award winner, which scratching my head on that one, but has been just okay. And the Seahawks team specifically, the front 7 has outside of Cody Barton, has not been super impressive. So hopefully you'll see Kyle Pitts get a little bit more involved, and Drake London get involved as well.
So let's kind of we're halfway in here. We've hit on a bunch of topics we wanted to hit in, and we've kind of scratched the surface on the Seahawks game. But yeah, I want to get into the Seahawks game as well, and specifically as Richie Rich comes in here, he says if we lose the Seahawks, we have to start Desmond Ridder, right? I don't know. Have to, obviously, always hedge, but at 0-3, and it's like, oh, we can't lose the Seahawks. We're underdogs. The Falcons are underdogs going to Seattle. It's a 2-point game, but you are underdogs. The Seahawks can play some pretty good defense, and Geno Smith has been efficient enough where he can hurt you just by dinking and diming. Just throwing what you take him. So you're going to have to bring some pressure. You're going to have to get some pressure on him. And hopefully get a takeaway, or he will 8-yard you. And that's kind of what I'm thinking about Kyle Pitts. 1 catch for 8 yards for Kyle Pitts is okay. Every catch doesn't have to be 25 yards downfield. So, that is the kind of game plan that they will have. And then they're going to play some pretty good defense. Their offense is bad. It is. It's bad. They haven't scored an offensive point, Nick, since the second quarter of game 1. The Broncos shut them out in the second half. And the 49ers shut them out. The 49ers defense shut them out last week. So this is a beatable team. Yeah. It is. It's definitely a beatable team. But can you go on the road to Seattle, back-to-back West Coast road trips? Guys, those airplane trips take some starch out of you. I don't care how strong and in condition these guys are. 3,000 miles, what's that? Going back and forth, 12,000 miles in 7 days on airplanes. That wears you out a little bit. So again, that's one of the reasons, as Dan said on NFL, where I posted the link earlier, this is a better Atlanta team than we saw a year ago. Now the Falcons just need to find a path to victory. Can they find that in the great Northwest, 3,000 miles away? It's tough. It's tough on the road up there.
Yeah, especially if it's going to be smoky, unfortunately. Jason L coming in saying Seahawks game is going to be pretty tough. It's super loud there. It is super loud there. I was there 2 weeks ago when the Broncos lost to the Seahawks. I don't think it's going to be nearly that loud, especially after the Seahawks got pounded by the 49ers last week. The Seahawks were 2-0. You might see a little bit more vigor from the fans, and they'll still be loud. But I got to say, and this is unfair, this is me just trying to insult the Seahawks here, but I've been to some Big Ten stadiums that were definitely more ruckus and louder than what I saw in Seattle. But it was definitely the loudest NFL stadium I have been in. So credit to them in that one. How do you negate the noise in that situation, Scott? What is your opinion on the best way to make sure that the crowd is not as in it, or it's not impacting you like it seemed to the Denver Broncos offense?
An early lead.
Yeah.
Get an early lead. That was one of the things about the Broncos game, and this is one of the reasons we're talking about the Broncos game is, well, we know it, but two, it was the last home game. So this is an apples to apples comparison. The Broncos kicked off, they went right down and scored. So the Seattle was ahead first drive, and the team was in it. And again, they won't have as much anger towards or will to win, the fans, as much juice in them as they did against, the Rust Bowl, which is actually what Dan calls it in this power rankings column. He says, hey, we'll always have the Rust Bowl. But yeah, it is going to be tough. It is going to be a tough game. Again, if you can get a lead, play with a lead. And, Jameis Winston has made a living of carving up the Atlanta Falcons. Geno Smith is not is a good Jameis. Geno Smith's best is not as good as Jameis Winston's best. We saw Jameis Winston's best in the fourth quarter of the Saints and Falcons. I mean, just gorgeous throws downfield, big chunk plays, 25, 30 yards at a time. Geno Smith isn't built to bring a team back like that, knock on wood. I know it's the Falcons. I know, Scott, what are you saying? I know. Get a lead on these guys. Make him throw the ball. And, come out fast, and that crowd will settle down quickly. You let them become a factor by running the play clock down to 1, pre-snap penalties, every false start, delay a game, illegal motion illegal set, all of those pre-snap penalties, man, that's fuel to the fire for a crowd because they know they're making a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Chris comes in saying Falcons are staying in Washington this week instead of going home. That makes sense. Playing in LA
Okay, thank
and
you,
just staying up
Chris.
in Washington. Actually, one of my good friends that lives up here, he's working with the Falcons equipment people he works for Penske, getting the equipment to the stadium. We're contracting with the Falcons. So I was like, hey, snag me a Kyle Pitts helmet. Nobody will ever know. No, I'm just kidding. But that'd be great. But no, yeah, they're staying out here. That makes a lot of sense. Why would you fly back to Atlanta
Yeah,
when
that
you're the
makes sense.
NFL?
That'll help. That will help for sure. Being on the road for a week can be tough, but that's definitely smarter to do that. It's more like a baseball road trip, which by the end of those baseball West Coast swings, all they want to do is come home. But the question here, what does Mariota have to do to hold off if they're 0-3 and he plays okay again? One of the problems I see with Mariota is he plays. They're moving the ball. He looks good. Okay, this is a quarterback. Boom, disaster play. That's what seems to be in one game. I didn't watch him that much when he was in Tennessee, I'll be honest. And what we saw at Oregon was a different animal. That was a Heisman Trophy guy. But what I see is good play bracketed by disaster plays. There's a high variance there with Mariota. And 1-2 more of these disaster plays, it helps cost a game. And 0-3, Arthur Smith doesn't really want to play a rookie, I don't think. But would he? Would he at this point?
It's hard to say. I think that just looking at the Falcons' schedule, Mariota is not the answer, but he's also not the problem right now. You paid him all that money, and also it seems like in that locker room, they really do like Mariota. So if this team was losing because of him, like outright just incompetence, I think you'd see a little bit more push for that. But the games I've watched, it doesn't look like pure Mariota incompetence that is losing this team the game. It's that this last week, the offensive line was not getting much push. The run game wasn't existent there. The three guys you listed the worst scored on PFF did not have great games. And then the defense
gave up 31 points.
And then the defense is still a ways off. I think the defense is the biggest issue on this team still. So you do want to gather information on Ritter, but you also want to feel the pulse of the team. You don't want to put Ritter out there too soon as well. And also, it'd be great if Ritter comes out there and takes off and becomes like, the next Dak Prescott, day 2, day 3 level quarterback that becomes a starter. Maybe should have been drafted over Kenny Pickett, given how bad Mitch Trubisky's looked so far in comparison to even Mariota. But I think looking at the Falcons schedule, unless you're talking about, just absolutely offensive incompetence, games that I have circled just looking at here, week 8 against the Carolina Panthers, that one sticks out to me. And also week 11 against the Chicago Bears, 2 home games that are about halfway through the season. You're still going to give him plenty of time to prep and also kind of get a good sample size on him, get a good read in some competition there where you at least should have somewhat of a small landing.
Yeah, I think it'd be a little too soon also at 0-3. It's not quite, I've given up hope yet. I mean, Falcons fans may have, but Falcons fans start with just a little bit of hope every season anyway. I've used the Lucy yanking the ball away from Charlie Brown more than once to open the season. But I think you hit on it, Nick, talking about those games. What's the record? Because again, you're looking at this. It's like, okay, if you're at Seattle Seahawks, you're not favored in that game. Cleveland Browns at home, you're not going to be favored in that game. At Tampa Bay, come on.
You
San
might be
Francisco
Cleveland
at home.
You
You're
might
not
be
going to be
Cleveland.
favored in that game. At Cincinnati Bengals, who knows what that team could look like in a week? You never know. But then week 8, Carolina Panthers, maybe. Los Angeles Chargers, week 9. I mean, you hear the schedule? I mean, this is what I'm talking about, y'all. It's not that this team is better. Oh, this team's better. They were 7 wins last year. They should be 10 this year. No, this team is better. The schedule is a lot harder. It is a lot harder this year. Last year's schedule was a joke because the Falcons were bad. They were really bad and were able to get out 7 wins, which should give you hope. It's like, okay, I like the way this team plays in crunch time, how they, 7-2 and 1-score games. I like that. But this is a tough schedule. This is. And Ritter has been trending. I don't know about y'all, but on my timeline on Twitter, Ritter has been trending all week. The calls for him are only going to get louder. How much will the media ask him? How much will the media push Arthur Smith? Probably not a ton.
Careful.
Yeah, probably not a ton, but the talk shows and all the chatter that surrounds definitely will. And as Dave says, the problem is QBs in 2023. You're right, Dave. This is a really good-looking class of quarterbacks in 2023, Nick. So what do you do? What do you know what you have if he doesn't get 8 games under his belt?
If you like a guy in the draft, you take him. It's not a fair league. It never should be a fair league. You got to go out there and get your guy. Obviously, Ritter could end up being the answer still, but we have a lot of data based on especially the last decade, where quarterbacks that aren't drafted in the first round have very long odds of hitting the league. I think the only one I can think of that really hit and became a quality second contract caliber quarterback that I can think of out of the last 10 drafts is Dak Prescott. There might be somebody else there that I'm missing right now, but that's
Russell
all I can
Wilson's
think of.
close on that.
He's over a decade though.
Yeah, he's 10 years, so is he 11 in?
Yeah, and Kirk Cousins also a little bit on the other end of that, so just missing that. But I can't really think of any other quality starters in that range. So, and that doesn't mean Desmond Ridder can't, because there's always exceptions, and
Right.
maybe he should have been drafted earlier than he was. But you shouldn't be banking on that, and that's another reason people want to see him out there. But
Exactly.
you start him,
And that's kind of the Falcons' point, Nick,
yeah,
is Falcons fans, this
yeah.
this group's point is, listen, what are we playing for?
Hurts. There's another one. Jalen Hurts. A little bit early to crown Hurts second contract guy, but man, he looks really good out there. To be fair, man, that Eagles roster around him might be one of the best in football this season, especially that offensive line. God, they looked so good on the offensive line this last week. But yeah, Jalen Hurts is another one.
Addison coming in with a $4 super sticker. Thank you, Addison, for breaking the ice for us today. It's a good chance to give a reminder that, if you want to help support the show, stars on Facebook and super chats, super stickers are ways you can help do that. We love you being here. But again, if you want to help support the show, like Addison just did, he did it on YouTube with a super sticker. You can do super chats. And then on Facebook, both channels, if you're watching it on either channel, they are both enabled for stars. So big help to the show. Helps us keep going, helps keep the lights on, keep my forehead nice and shiny. Dave comes in, he says, let's face it, I've come to grips that Grady Jarrett might not be able to string 2 good games back-to-back. Hello, Jalen Carter. As we move down, as the losses start piling up, if they do, we're going to start diving more into draft. Week 2 might be a little early. Hey, Will Anderson. Hey, Bryce Young, because right now the Falcons have the number 1 pick after 2 weeks. But yeah, and Grady needs help out there. They're not playing as much base 3-4. He is playing inside a little bit more, but again, when I'm watching him, he's doing really well, but you can scheme one guy. He's going to need some help. His 2 on the outside, we got a journeyman edge to his right in Lorenzo Carter. I got a second-year, 4th or 5th round draft pick in Taquan Graham. I got a guy we signed off the practice squad, and Anthony Rush next to him, and a rookie on the other side. There's your front 5. So that's the negative look at things. I could say, okay, I got a rookie second rounder with a ton of upside and a second-year player playing his lights off in Graham, and man, did they miss on Rush? But the reality is, rookie, second-year, 5th round draft pick, practice squad, Grady Jarrett, journeyman. There's your front 5.
Yeah.
So if you're able to target Grady Jarrett out of the game, I'll never forget last year, Nick. I'll have to look it back up. I think I saved it somewhere. He was triple teamed and he was mic'd up, and he goes, damn, don't y'all have anybody else to block? No, no, we don't.
Yeah. And AE saying he's an edge on a tackle. Are you talking who are we talking
Grady
about?
Jarrett. Grady Jarrett, I think he's not an end. 3-4, he plays a lot of end, but I think he is a better tackle. I agree with you.
His best spot is the 3 technique, where he can
his
gap
best
penetrator.
spot. His best spot's a 4-3 defensive tackle. He plays when they're in a base 3-4. He's playing the end, never edge. So if I said edge, I apologize. The 2 edge guys are Lorenzo Carter, Ogundeji, backed up by and then Ebiketti's in there. I actually can't even think. D'Angelo Malone played
Yeah,
played the edge. So you had 2 rookies, a 5th round pick, and a journeyman as your edge. And the thing that's scary is that's a huge upgrade
yeah,
over
yeah. It is.
last season.
It is, but yeah, no, this is not getting too far ahead here with the draft. But I think right now, what are we, 3 weeks into the college season? But it seems like there are two crown jewels in this draft class at the non-quarterback position in Will Anderson, obviously the edge rusher from Alabama. If you can get him, I think you take him. And Jalen Carter, who was, in my opinion, the most impressive defensive lineman on that Georgia defense last year, which is incredible. Saying something. Travon Walker, probably the best athlete at the most valuable position. I digress, though. So if you can get a top 2 pick out of either of those guys, definitely want to run with that. Other names that I would keep an eye on. The one that makes I'm really curious about what the Falcons do with tackle with Grady Jarrett, because there are some tackle options that would be interesting. But with the way, with the way Caleb McGarry is playing, maybe that becomes a different discussion. But really, it's the defense, man. It's all about the defense. Miles Murphy, edge rusher. You got a couple cornerbacks, maybe make you interesting as well. Cam Smith from South Carolina, and another Clemson defensive lineman, Brian Brees. So we'll see. And I sent you a couple clips. Did you see the Florida guy at all
I
that I
did.
sent you?
I
Man,
did.
he's like
I did.
6'6". He's an interesting
No,
tool to get.
again, growing up in the 80s, it's one of the reasons I do what I do. People say, "Hey, how'd you get into this?" I grew up in the 80s. The Braves were a 100-game, less than a million fans a year, all through my growing up years. I did ages 7 to 17 in the 80s. I am a child of the frickin' 80s. The Braves were awful. The Falcons had one winning season, 1980. So I became a fan of the process of the draft, of the minor leagues, of all those things. And for this coming season, it's exciting for the Falcons. They're going to have a ton of money and should have at least one high draft pick up there, depending on what they do with that. So it should be exciting. Some good questions coming in here that I definitely want to get to. We're at 45 minutes, and we don't have to get out of here. Nick, you can, whenever you're ready, but we'll go the full hour, and I can stick around a little bit longer if need be as these questions start coming in. So get them in. But Dave has a question that's, and I highlighted that question from Albert, or that comment from Albert. He says, the knight needs to make an appearance. Ritter is Dutch for knight. So Albert, our resident Dutch expert, is saying that, he's Desmond Knight. I like that. I do. I like that. There's that beats better than, Flop or e-tron, the Audi e-tron. I don't know if you've heard this story, Nick, but the Audi e-tron is their new electric, and Tron is French for turd. So, so much better to have Knight. I like that a lot better. But Dave has a question here that scares the bejesus out of me, Nick. It says, how soon do the Falcons start looking for their future left tackle? Those restructures could be costly to the roster building.
Yeah, you have a lot of cap that's going to become available here pretty soon with a wealthy owner. So, and it depends what you do at the quarterback position, but I think the direction of this Falcons team is probably a rookie passer, and you have some weapons that are really cheap as well. So I was just looking at Jake Matthews' contract, and it looks like earliest you can get out of it is after 2023. So that makes it seem like this draft class probably not super likely to move on, and it's after 2023, so before the 2024 season. A lot of it will come down to how you feel about this tackle's ability to play guard or right tackle early, if you did draft one, and then maybe kicking over to left tackle, right tackle. I think it's a little bit overrated. I know that the left tackles make slightly more money, but it seems like a lot of the elite pass rushers are going up against right tackles these days. So you need to have one of each on both sides that are pretty good. So how soon would they start looking left tackle? Maybe this year, but it'd be like a 3-year plan to get him out there, 2024, 2025. Have to figure out somewhere else on the offensive line for a bit. But with Matthews' restructure, he's here to stay for at least, I think, 2 more years.
Here's a problem I have with this. 2 more years for sure. And this is why it scares me, Nick. You mentioned, okay, you can get out of it after, if you let it play out, if you let his contract play out, he will be, after the 2023 season, he'll be 31 years old during that. So he's getting there. You can play longer than that as an offensive lineman, that's for sure. But you're starting to knock on the door of when you're going to start seeing a decline. His cap hit for next year, and there should be plenty of money, so maybe you can eat this cap hit, but his cap hit for next year is $34 million. Do you know what the highest cap hit for a left tackle is in the NFL this year? It's 21. It's 21. I have a hard time seeing that they're going to let a left tackle with a $33 million cap hit next year. Do you know who has the highest cap hit in left tackle in the entire NFL right now?
My guess would be Trent Williams.
Garrett Bowles, Denver Broncos. So
Mhm.
it could be one of those Matt Ryan things where Garrett Bowles is okay, but he gets a lot of shtick because he's the highest paid guy in the league. He's not bad, but you're not getting your value. So why I say is this a concern is because they're going to say, all right, we can restructure again and clear up $15 million in cap space and kick that $33 million, $40 million dead cap hit down the road a little bit. Eventually that bill comes due. It comes due. So knowing that this is a rebuild and you should have plenty of money available anyway, and you're not, okay, we're not $15 million away from making the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Eat it. Take it. Take the cap hit. Take the cap hit next year at $33 million with Jake Matthews, because then you are done. You are done with all of your bad contracts. It goes from the next year, the year after that, when you say there's a potential out, his cap hit goes to 18 in 2024 with his dead cap hit of 7.5. That means you're vulnerable. That means that's when you have flexibility with the player's contract. At a $34 million cap hit with a $31 million dead cap number next year, you don't have flexibility, and you're paying him about 50% more than the next highest guy.
Yeah.
Are you going to do that? Will they do that? Or are they going to restructure and just wait for it to come due again? That's a big, big question going into this year. So Dave, good question. That's why it scares me, because this is the last of the bad contracts that will be on the books. Matt Ryan's is gone. Julio Jones's is gone. Deion Jones's will be gone next year. Those contracts, the four bad ones where you're way upside down on them, were those three and Jake Matthews. There's only one left. If you can stomach a $34 million cap hit next year while he's still playing at a decent level, you can be done with your bad contracts. Done. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, that's probably the way to do it. And that's another reason that you look at the cheap, you're saving on the quarterback. It's like you're paying a little bit you have a clunker of a car for a little bit, but you are taking a couple of incredible vacations. Your budget still comes out to about normal. Maybe you would rather be paying a quarterback than the left tackle, but for one season, you're still going to come out even in that area. So we'll see. And again, he's a competent left tackle. He's not amazing, but he's probably, right around that top 15 tackles in football, top 20 tackles in football. And those guys are very valuable, because if you have crap out there, you're going to get killed. So I think you probably just take it next year and maybe continue to add the offensive line. It'd be really important to add somebody with some versatility in that case. But right now, the way this Falcons team is lining up, it screams to me defensive line, edge rusher, cornerback, if not quarterback.
Yeah,
yep.
I agree. And we'll get to Richie Rich or Joe there's a good question here about cap space and team building I'm going to get to before we get out of here too, and how to use it, because I agree with it. But Mark Turner says, I want to see the Anderson twins out there, Abdullah and Troy. I've talked up Abdullah Anderson for a month now. He gets out there and he's yo-yoed on the roster, off the roster. I talked about him as a surprise cut when he didn't make the 53, re-signed to the practice squad, then cut again, and then brought back. He's finally elevated to the 53 this week. So he was on the practice squad. He was a flex. And when he was out there, he played in the fourth quarter. This is crunch time in the comeback. And Abdullah Anderson and Troy Anderson are both on the field, and they're both making a difference, a big difference. They played about 20 snaps combined after playing 0 in week 1. And rookie Troy Anderson and his athleticism, that burst he has to get off the field. I don't care if nobody blocks you. It's hard to block a punt. Even coming straight up the middle untouched, to get there in time shows you've got some athleticism. And Rashaan Evans was playing himself out of position. As Joe Cannon says, will we see Troy Anderson soon? Evans has been caught out of position, both the run and the pass. Yes, he has. when he's over pursuing and allowing the cutback lanes to come up, kind of like Ogundeji. Well, Ogundeji's out there because he stops a run. No, he doesn't. He's not. He's a liability against a run. Rashaan Evans is supposed to be out there to make sure that stuff doesn't happen. So if it's happening, man, give me my rookie who's running a 4-something out there who's 245 pounds of wrecking ball.
Yeah. No, you want to see Troy Anderson out there soon. You just wonder if, given his positions that he's played so much, quarterback, running back, linebacker, at Montana State, if it's too much right now for him. I mean, linebacker is a position that is neck up. I mean, the elite, it's like quarterback in a way where, if you have like the athleticism, the build, the arm talent, that's all great. But if you don't possess it from the neck up, or the game is too fast for you when you're young, you're better to sit on them, in my opinion, for a little bit than let them get exposed out there. So yeah, Evans is being caught out of position, but I think I trust the coaches and I trust Dean Pease to get Troy Anderson out there at the right time. It's also a confidence thing. He's working his way off injury and just a young player that's still just learning the position, the physicality, the run fits. You'll see him there before long, but I don't think I'd be looking to rush him out there because, again, this is a team you can slow play things this season. You want to find some things out, but you got, what do we have left? 15 more games left this season. You're going to find things out still. You don't have to rush it and put these guys in position where you don't think they're quite ready. And that goes for Anderson, that goes for Ritter, that goes for a lot of these young guys.
It goes back to what I've been harping on, which is you can say win now all you want to, but every move that these guys have made has been for the future. Mm-hmm. It's not, okay, we're building in the long term to get him out there. I see that. I get that. It looks like it's paid off with Richie Grant. We're not building for this year. We know. We won't say it. We won't admit it. And by God, we're going to call you out and say nasty things about you if you question that we're not aiming for a Super Bowl this year. But every move they've made, don't watch what they say, watch what they do. And every move they have made since they've taken over, Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot, has been building towards 2023. That said, I'd like to see him out there. And what's interesting is he wouldn't be by himself. That's the thing, is he wouldn't be out on an island in the middle right there. Michael Walker has still got the green dot, and he's calling all the plays. And Michael Walker played 62 snaps while Rashaan Evans played 54. So with Troy Anderson coming in and getting nine snaps, I think I could 25 and 25. So there's 61 snaps between the guys. I think I could go 30-30 between Evans and Anderson and start working him in there a little bit more. A little bit like we said with Ebiketie and Ogundeji. We saw that 2-1 split in game one. And then game two, it flipped where Ebiketie actually had a few more snaps than Ogundeji. I'd like to see that ratio start to come closer to 1-1.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. We'll see those guys out there. Hopefully you start to see, like you said, Ebiketie get out there more. These guys could, and especially in positions where it's more rotational across the defensive line. There's always going to be reps there. One of the reasons that I wished you had a young cornerback out there, there's going to be reps there for those guys as well. But alas, that's a position that maybe looking for the Falcons this year. Does seem unfortunate at this point in time. Still a lot of season to go. There doesn't seem to be a slam dunk cornerback at the top like we had the last two drafts where we've had some guys who are really talented up at the top. But we'll see. Dave coming in saying free agency should be bringing supplements for the roster, not splurging. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Now, if you can bring somebody in that's a difference maker because of the core you already have, I think that's a great way to go. But it's because you're already in a great position. And somebody's like, oh, I want to go see what's going on in Atlanta. I want to go catch passes from that guy, or I want to go be a part of that defense. I think you can splurge a little bit then, but your core should always be built through the draft.
So we talked about before with this team, I think there were, I could look it up. I've got it open right now. So on Spot Rack, go to with all of the missing players out there as far as how much money is not on the field. There's only 6 players making $4 million or more on this team. Only 6. When we played the Saints had 12. So when I say splurge, it depends. Again, those are relative terms. I don't want to splurge and try and go get a $15 million safety to replace Eric Harris. What I do want is maybe some more $5 to $7 million competent professionals in there, some good pros. And with $100 million, I could add 25 of those guys. I've only got 6 of them now. I could add 25 of those guys on this team. That won't happen. But if I were to take $10 million guys and sprinkle them into this roster, how much difference would that make? If I didn't have to put Eric Harris out there, if I wasn't relying on a Ogundeji right now, but I could have another good pro in that spot, if I wasn't having to use a converted right tackle at left guard, and I could put in a solid $8 million guard at left guard, or I didn't have to rely on the Hennessy Dahlman, and maybe I can get a center, all those things, but it should give you the flexibility to fill a couple of those gaping holes. Casey Hayward is solid. He's old. He's old. Maybe I can go get 2 more cornerbacks at $10 million each. I mean, the possibilities.
Yeah. Right.
Not to mention the draft, where I don't constantly have to shop off the Chicago Bears waiver wire to fill out my roster.
Yeah, no, it's things are going to get better in Atlanta. This season's going to be rough, but no doubt this is just the beginning of the right direction here, and I think you got the right head coach in there, as long as he just playing maybe a little bit more nice with the media. The relationships already a little bit strained, but we got Terry coming in here, Terry Ocean Boy Martin Jr. with the Falcons here. So, and we talked earlier, we're looking for a breakfast morning themed Falcons show. I liked Early Bird Talk. I saw that one earlier from Albert Knoppers. I was thinking Flapjack Falcons is fun as well. Just kind of silly, but yeah, if you guys have anything like that, that'd be a good one.
In the old day, the Falcons used to be called the Coons, and that was the Falcons. And that wasn't. I'm not going that way anymore, though. It's too sensitive. It was an old. It was not racially motivated, but everything these days is. You can't do something like that. But coffee with and I'm like, no, can't do that one.
I wouldn't do that one. No.
Yeah, can't do that one. But yeah, there's lots of things to do. Terry, I'm glad to see you in here. Last Monday, he had the broken heart in there as one of his emojis. So it looks like the red and black Terry is feeling better. Good. I think I'm happy for that. And Mark Turner says, considering our cap problems, we have a pretty damn good team. I agree. That's the thing I've been harping on with expectations and with Arthur Smith acting like a child. One, set your expectations. This is a team that's in trouble. There we go. I think Slappy Tom has it. Breakfast with the birds. That makes us birds.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out. I like that. But the early bird, something like that makes sense. We'll go through a rebrand here. And sponsors, if you want to sponsor our rebrand, the team that they've put out there with half a roster is competitive. That is hard to do. That is a credit to Arthur Smith. That is a credit to Terry Fontenot. That is a credit to the 69 men on the practice field and doing it, and the men and women that have done the scouting to make this happen. Because this team financially is a freaking disaster. It's a disaster. And it will get better. God, it's almost done. That's why the Jake Matthews one scares me. Before we get out of here, I promised a prediction. Going to Seattle, back-to-back West Coast road games. They didn't travel both times. Thank you for the correction on that. That makes much more sense. I like it when people do things that make sense, which is not travel 12,000 miles in 7 or 8 days. But it's a tough place to play. It is. It's a tough place to play. They were embarrassed last week. You're on the road. 2-point underdog. How about a prediction?
I think the Falcons are going to come out and win this game, personally. I think the Seahawks, they won their Super Bowl. They had a letdown last week. And that Geno Smith, without the miscommunication, broken plays, that the Broncos win that one easily, even with the fumbles. So I think this is a Falcons team that's much more spunky and talented than the Seahawks roster. So I'm going to go with the Falcons winning this one 27-13. I think they're going to win this one.
That's a lot of points.
Yeah, I think they're going to put it up. I don't think the Seahawks team is very good.
AE comes in, he says 27-16 Falcons. I'm a pessimist, and I've come by it honestly. Like I said, I was born in Cleveland. I grew up in Atlanta. There's a reason I'm a cynical SOB. I think the road-weary Falcons on the road. They've dodged the injury bullet so far, and there hasn't been a lot of that. I don't think it's going to come out as a win. I like 17-16. I like the under in this one. The over-under is 42. And I'm going 17-16 Seahawks. And again, I like the under. I won't be surprised if the Falcons can win this one. But if I got to pick one, I'm going to go with the home team on this one, which is and stick to my guns that the bad teams that the Falcons are playing, for the most part, are on the road, which makes the schedule so much tougher. So I'm going 17-16 Seahawks, and we'll be happy to come in on Monday morning and eat some Seahawk crow on Monday morning after the game.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll be a good time, and a little bummed you're not coming out, but I guess I'm gonna be gone anyway, Scott. So what can you do? And also, you're gonna be busy in Denver, enjoying the Mile High Huddle meetup. So probably got to wrap it up. I got to go pick up groceries here. But we got Nathan coming up. 31-24 Falcons. There we go. A lot of points again, but
that's a lot of points. He's counting on some pick sixes and some special teams.
I just don't think either of these defenses are very formidable right now.
But the offenses
are not formidable.
How is, if they score 24 points, the Seahawks haven't scored an offensive point in 6 quarters.
That's true. I think 49ers, Broncos, Saints, and who was the other team? The Rams probably have top 12 defenses. So I could see it kind of evening out here a little bit.
Right.
But
25 is still a lot of points. That's why I think mid-teens. But we'll see. Again, looking forward to that's why we're going to play the game. So anyway, thanks everybody for being here. We went a little over an hour today. And one of the reasons is because of y'all in the chat, and certainly appreciate you being here. It makes the show so much more fun. Thank you to Addison, who came in with our super sticker today, coming in with some support for the show. A reminder that stars and super chats and super stickers are a good way to help support our soon-to-be renamed Forging the Falcons morning show. So on that note, I guess we will see you tomorrow. Nick and I will be back on Mile High Huddle tomorrow on Broncos for Breakfast as we take a look at the Broncos and who the Broncos playing. I'm already getting confused. 49ers. Speaking of 49ers. Speaking of 49ers. So will be a lot of crossover here. A lot of crossover here. So on that note, thanks again, everybody, for being here. Leave a like, a subscribe, and a share on your way out. And if you're watching after the fact, go ahead and do that. And if you're catching this on one of your podcasts, and you can always find us on falconspod.com or falconspodcast.com. We're everywhere, man. No excuses. No excuses this weekend. It's time for the Birds to go get a win. So until next time, we will see you back here next week. It will not be at the regular scheduled time, but I will figure out when that's going to be. And make sure that you're following us on Twitter @Scout Kennedy and @Nick Kendall so you can get all the right information. So thanks again for being here, and we'll see you.